You're standing in mud outside Westminster Abbey. It's the 3rd of September, 1189. The bells won't stop. The air smells of tallow and wet wool and horse. A boy is selling relics off a plank. A woman beside you prays out loud. Somebody behind you is shouting because he can't see. Inside, a man of 31 is being anointed with holy oil. On the head, on the chest, on the hands. In an hour, he will be Richard I of England. The crowd is happy. The crowd is enormous. The crowd is about to kill people. No police, no standing army, no fire brigade, no hospitals, no newspapers, no way to stop a rumour once it starts to run. By dawn, the Jewish quarter of London is burning. By spring, hundreds are dead across 6 English towns. And 5 years after that, a clerk writes a law. Short. Boring. Almost nobody remembers it today. That law will outlive every single person standing in this crowd. So how does a coronation turn into a massacre? And why does the law that follows protect the debts instead of the dead? Ask it again. The debts, not the dead. Let's start with the door. Westminster, the 3rd of September, 1189. Roger of Howden leaves us the account. A royal clerk, he was there or close to it. Richard had given an order before the ceremony. No Jews, no women, inside the abbey. Not policy, superstition. A worry about ritual pollution on the day a king is made holy. But a delegation of leading Jewish men came anyway, to the feast at the palace afterwards. They brought gifts, they came to pay respects, and to have their privileges confirmed. Their fathers had done the same under Henry II. This was routine. A new king, a new confirmation, gifts on the table. It had happened before, without a drop of blood. Among them, Benedict of York and Jossie of York. They reached the threshold. The doorkeepers stopped them. Then the doorkeepers beat them, stripped them, threw them into the street in front of thousands of people. It looks like a royal decree being enforced. It wasn't. It was a handful of servants at a door improvising. But the crowd outside could not see a servant improvising. The crowd saw Jews thrown bleeding out of the king's own hall, on the king's own day. And a crowd always finishes a story it has only seen half of. Somebody said it out loud in the street. Somebody else repeated it. The rumour crossed London faster than a horse. Within an hour, the street version was simple. The king has ordered the destruction of the Jews. Nobody had ordered it. It didn't matter. In 1189, nothing on earth can catch a false sentence and kill it. The London Jewry sat just north of Cheapside. We still call those streets Old Jewry. The houses there were stone. Stone was the point. Stone is what you build when you already know what your neighbours are capable of. The mob couldn't break the doors, so they climbed onto the roofs. They set the houses alight from above. Then they waited outside for people to come out. Jacob of Orleans, a respected scholar visiting from France, was killed that night. Benedict of York was dragged into a church, baptised with a blade at his throat. The next day he stood in front of Richard and took it back. He said he had never stopped being a Jew. Richard turned to Baldwin, Archbishop of Canterbury, and asked what should be done with him. The Archbishop's answer in the Chronicle is roughly this: if he will not be Christ's man, let him be the devil's. Benedict was let go. He died of his wounds a short time later at Northampton. It looks like religion. Nobody was debating theology at 2 a.m. with a torch in his hand. But watch what the king does next. That is where you see the real machine. Richard was furious. Not vaguely, specifically. He sent officers into the city and had men arrested for the riot. 3 of them were hanged. Roger of Howden tells us why each one died. 2 were executed because their fire spread. It had burned the houses of Christians. The 3rd was hanged for robbing a Christian during the chaos. Read that list again. Nobody was executed for killing a Jew. In the England of 1189, that wasn't an oversight. It was the law working exactly as designed. Jews in England lived under a doctrine that made them the king's own. His to protect, his to tax, his to squeeze. Their property was, in the final instance, his property. Their loans were, in the final instance, his income. A dead Jewish moneylender was a damaged royal asset. It looks like justice arriving. It's an audit arriving. The king wasn't avenging people. He was inspecting the balance sheet after a fire. But Richard did not stay to enforce anything. He had a crusade to pay for. He left England in December, 4 months after his coronation. He would spend roughly 6 months of a 10-year reign in the country he ruled. To fund the journey to Jerusalem, he sold whatever could be sold. Offices, sheriffdoms, castles, charters of liberty to towns. Richard of Devizes has him joking about it. He would sell London itself if he could find a buyer, and the men who took the cross with him had the same problem in miniature. A knight needed horses, mail, servants, ship passage, food for 2 years. Most of them raised it the only way available. They borrowed, often from Jewish lenders. Canon law blocked Christians from open lending at interest, and the Crown had engineered a community it could tax like a private bank. So thousands of armed men stood around England, waiting for spring, each carrying 2 things at once: a holy vow, and a debt owed to the people that vow taught them to hate. It looks like a religious movement. It's a liquidity crisis with a cross on it. But the fire did not stay in London. Norwich, the 6th of February, 1190. Houses broken open, people killed in their homes. Then Stamford in March during the fair. The town was full of crusaders and strangers. Then Lynn on the coast. A mob burned the quarter. Sailors did much of the killing, then sailed out. Then Bury St. Edmunds on Palm Sunday, the 18th of March, 1190. 57 people died in Bury in a single day, and Lincoln was spared. The families there reached the royal castle in time, and the constable held the gate. One town survival turned on one man at one door. Now look at these towns on a map and ask what they have in common. They are not the most devout towns in England. They are the market towns, fair towns, lending towns, places where a crusader could sell a horse and hear a sermon. And remember, the same afternoon, who was holding his bond. It looks coordinated. Historians have gone looking for the plot for 200 years, and it isn't there. No orders, no network, no leader, nowhere except York. There the men who owed the most seem to have agreed in advance. Everywhere else, what spread was not a conspiracy. It was a permission. Every town watched the town before it to this and received no punishment. But the worst of it came 3 days after Bury, in the north. York, the 16th and 17th of March, 1190. It starts with a house fire and a robbery. The Jewish families do the sensible thing. They ask the royal castle for protection. The castle is the king's. They are the kings. They are let in. Up onto the mound. Into the wooden tower that stood where Clifford's tower stands today. Then it goes wrong. They stop trusting the constable and refuse to let him back in. So the constable calls in the sheriff. The sheriff calls out the county militia. The militia joins the mob. Now the royal army is besieging the people it exists to protect. Around 150 people are inside. On the last night, a rabbi from France tells them what is coming. His name is Yom Tov of Joigny. Most of them die by their own hands, and the tower burns. A few surrender the next morning on a promise of mercy. They are killed as they come out of the door. William of Newburgh writes it down within a decade. A canon living 20 miles away. He does not spare his own side. It looks like the end of the story. It's the middle. But the mob had one more building to visit. They walked from the smoking mound to York Minster. They were not going to pray. In the cathedral, under the care of the clergy, sat a chest. Inside were the bonds, the written record of what the gentry of Yorkshire owed to Jewish lenders. The crowd took the documents out. They burned them in the middle of the church at night. The clergy watched and did not stop them. Among the ringleaders was a knight named Richard de Malbis, a landholder, deep in debt to the estate of Arran of Lincoln. The killing at the castle took 2 days. The fire at the Minster took minutes. It looks like a massacre with a robbery attached. Turn it around. It was a debt cancellation with a massacre attached. The bodies were the method. The paperwork was the objective. But look at what the Crown does about it. May 1190. William de Longchamp, Bishop of Ely, Chancellor of England, rides north with an armed force. He is furious, and he is efficient. He arrives to find that the ringleaders are gone. Most of them have crossed into Scotland. Some have taken the cross and left for Jerusalem, which conveniently suspends legal action against a crusader. So Longchamp does what remains. He dismisses the Sheriff of Yorkshire. He dismisses the constable of the castle. He takes hostages from the citizens of York. He finds the city. He seizes the lands of Richard de Malbis, and then he goes home. Around 150 people died on that mound. Nobody is executed for it. It looks like weakness. It looks like a government that could not reach the guilty. It is neither. It is consistency. In 1189, 3 men hang in London for burning Christian houses and robbing a Christian. In 1190, in York, the punishment for a massacre is a bill. The Crown does not think in bodies. The Crown thinks in receipts. But the fine did not restore what the fire in the Minster had destroyed, because those men had burned something they did not understand. They had not burned their own debts. They had burned the king's money. Arran of Lincoln had died 4 years earlier, in 1186. By most measures, he was the richest man in England, and he was not a king. His money built things you can still walk into. Lincoln Cathedral works, Peterborough Abbey. Around 9 Cistercian abbeys carried his loans. Under English rules he died with no legal heir, so everything he owned went to the Crown, and everything he owned was mostly other people's promises. The debts owed to Arran were now owed to Richard's father, then to Richard. The sum was so vast that the Treasury built a department just to collect it. Its own clerks, its own name, Arran's Exchequer. Part of the physical treasure was shipped to Normandy in 1187. It was lost in the Channel. It looks like a story about one rich man dying. It's the moment the English crown discovers a new kind of wealth. Not land, not silver in a cellar. Obligations, ink on skin. But ink burns, and York had just proved it in Publix. Then the pressure arrives. December 1192. Richard is on his way home from the Crusade. He is captured near Vienna by Duke Leopold of Austria, then handed to the Emperor Henry VI. The ransom is set at 100,000 marks, with more demanded on top. That is roughly 2 to 3 times the Crown's entire annual income. England is stripped to pay it. His mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, runs the collection and carries the silver to Germany herself. 1/4 of every man's movable goods. Church plate melted, wool from the monasteries taken at source, every sheriff squeezed. The government scrapes the country for coin, and somebody in the Exchequer does the arithmetic. A large slice of what the Crown can legally claim exists only as parchment, held in private hands. One night, one cathedral, one northern city. A mob deleted part of the king's assets with a torch. It looks like a king's personal misfortune. It's the fire that forges a law. Richard comes home in March 1194. He stays about 2 months and never returns. But the fix he leaves behind is not a guard. It's a filing system, 1194. The man doing the actual governing is Hubert Walter, Archbishop of Canterbury, Chief Justiciar, a professional administrator who had been on crusade and had counted the money. What he issues is usually called the Ordinances of the Jewry. It is one of the dullest documents of the 12th century. Here is what it says. Every debt, pledge, house, rent and possession is to be registered. Lending may take place only in a short list of designated towns. Every loan must be written as an indenture. One sheet written twice, then torn apart along a jagged edge. The two halves fit only each other. They cannot be forged. The lender keeps one half. The other half goes into a chest. The chest is called an Archa. It has 3 locks and 3 seals. 2 Christians hold one key. 2 Jews hold another. 2 royal clerks hold the third. The list of approved towns grows over the next century to around 24. Every one of them keeps a chest. Within a few years this grows its own court, the Exchequer of the Jews, its own justices, its own rolls. It looks like a protection granted to a persecuted community. It's protection granted to the record. After 1194, no mob can cancel a debt by burning a house. The debt exists in 3 places at once, but the law that made money fireproof did something else to the people inside it. Because the real product of 1189 was not justice and not safety, it was a database. The Ordinances were never written to stop the next massacre. They were written to make the next massacre financially pointless. Kill the lender. The loan survives him. In a locked box, in a town you have never visited. Guarded by 3 keys held by 3 groups who do not trust each other. That is not mercy. That is bookkeeping. That is the trade. Your life is not insured. Your loan is. And a system built to make you unkillable on paper knows exactly where you are, what you hold, what you are worth. 1210. King John summons the Jews of England to Bristol. He demands a tallage of roughly 60,000 marks. He can name the figure because the chests tell him what the community is holding. Men are imprisoned and tortured until they pay it. The Archa did that. 1275. Edward I issues the Statute of the Jewry. Lending at interest is banned outright. That deletes the one economic function the Crown had forced on the community for 2 centuries. 1290. The same king expels every Jew from England. Around 2,000 people. They have until the 1st of November to go, and the expulsion runs smoothly. The chests are opened. The outstanding debts transfer to the king. 700 years of exile executed as an administrative procedure. No fire required, and notice what never gets built. No elite royal bodyguard comes out of 1189. No security law about the king's person. No corps of guards. No crowd doctrine. No rules for the door. The English crown looked at a coronation that produced a massacre and legislated about parchment. The gap simply stays open. The 18th of May, 1896. Khodynka Field, outside Moscow. A crowd gathers for the coronation festival of Nicholas II. A rumour runs that the free gifts are running out. Roughly 1,389 people are crushed to death in minutes, 7 centuries later. Same shape, crowd rumour, no mechanism. Bodies stay unprotected. Ledgers get 3 locks. It is a door and 2 servants who decided something on their own. It is a rumour that no one could catch. It is a stone house with the roof on fire. It is a knight who owed money and found a way not to pay it. It is a chest with 3 keys, in a town the dead never saw. It is a king who spent 6 months of a 10-year reign in the country he owned. It is a fine paid where a hanging was owed. It is a clerk in 1194 who never went to York. He changed more than the mob did. We tell ourselves that power is the man with the crown, or the sword, or the torch. It isn't. Power is the man who keeps the copy. The mob at York understood something true. A written obligation is a real object, and fire is an argument. The crown understood it better, and answered with duplication. And that answer is older than England. Our species starts writing in Uruk around 3,300 years before Christ. The first tablets are not poems, not prayers, they are receipts. Barley, sheep, workers, quantities, names. The first thing humans ever wrote down was who owed what to whom. Everything else comes later. The epics, the laws, the scripture. all of it riding on an accounting technology. You're standing in mud outside Westminster Abbey. The bells, the oil, the boys selling relics off a plank. Every person in that crowd is gone. The king is gone. The men who burned the tower are gone. Their names survive only because someone wrote them into a record about money. Bodies fail, memory fails. A chest with 3 locks does not. The chest survived. Its descendants are in your pocket right now, in a phone, in an account, in a score you have never seen and cannot burn. We think we are remembered for what we did. We are remembered for what was written down about what we owed.